a locked briefcase, a Mercedes sports car, and inside the case, a Zastava assault rifle, a converted 9mm pistol, and more than 100 rounds of live ammunition. That's what officers found when they stopped 30-year-old Steven Demmer at the Eurotunnel terminal in Kokeles. The briefcase was wedged inside the car, locked shut, carried across from Amsterdam on a midnight run. Demmer thought it was just another trip for quick cash, but when Border Force opened it, the entire operation began to unravel. At the centre of it all was a couple, Demmer, the courier, and his girlfriend Chelsea Addison, a 30-year-old dancer from Walsall who investigators say played a managerial role, tied directly to organised gun runners higher up the chain. Together, they thought they'd carved a route into Britain for lethal firearms. Instead, they ended up with more than 23 years of combined jail time. This is the story of how a relationship built on greed, encrypted messages, and a craving for luxury led to one of the UK's strangest gun smuggling arrests in recent years. It was March 18th, 2020. Europe was shutting down, borders tightening, but at midnight, Demmer drove into the Eurotunnel terminal in a hired Mercedes, eyes on a payout. According to the National Crime Agency, it wasn't his first run. They suspected he'd made the trip at least twice before, though evidence only proved this third journey. As he pulled up for inspection, panic set in. He pulled out his phone and texted Addison, "What's in the case?" He claimed later he didn't even know what he was carrying. But the timing of that message, just as he was about to be stopped, told its own story. Border Force officers took him into the examination garage. The car looked clean enough, but the locked briefcase stood out. When they cracked it open, the contents stunned even hardened investigators. A Zastava M70 AB2, a Yugoslavian variant of the infamous AKM rifle. A Zoraki 9mm pistol, originally designed as a blank firer but converted to fire live rounds. And 100 bullets, with some designed for a different caliber weapon altogether. Proof these were destined for wider circulation, not just a one-off delivery. In that moment, Demmer's trip was over. But the investigation had only just begun. Questioned by officers, Demmer tried to spin a story. He said he worked as a personal trainer and a bodyguard. He claimed Addison, his girlfriend, had set him up after he treated her badly. That gang members had threatened him, forcing him to travel to Amsterdam to collect a suitcase from a car park. He swore he never opened it, didn't even know how to unlock it, and was simply taking it back to Addison. But investigators weren't convinced. His phone records showed constant contact with Addison during the trip, her checking in on his whereabouts as he drove back. Wicker messages between them showed planning, and when NCA officers dug deeper, Addison's DNA turned up on a laptop bag full of cash found in Demmer's car. Addison herself was arrested weeks later, on April 30th, at her home in Walsall. She denied leading the operation, painting herself as a scapegoat, claiming Demmer sometimes took her phone and used it without her knowledge. But by then, the evidence was too strong. Trips to Amsterdam, Wicker messages, DNA traces, and the lifestyle. Because for a woman who claimed to be struggling as a dancer, Addison was living large. She paid for a mortgage, drove a Range Rover, wore designer clothes, and planned trips to the Maldives, Jamaica, and Italy. At one point, she even boasted of having a 7-figure bank balance. Prosecutors argued it wasn't performance gigs funding that lifestyle. It was firearms smuggling. Demmer's excuses fell apart too. At trial, he dropped the duress defence. He admitted Addison had paid him £1,000 per trip to Amsterdam. He had 15 previous convictions for lesser offences, including assault, but nothing this serious. Facing the jury, the story of the bullied mule collapsed. He wasn't forced, he was paid, and he knew. Addison pleaded guilty. Demmer fought the charges but was convicted. At Canterbury Crown Court in December, Judge Simon James sentenced Addison to 11 years and 6 months. Damer got 11 years and 9 months. The pair sat in the dock as the judge told them both they had been seduced by greed. They craved, he said, the cash-rich lifestyle which often accompanies serious crime. For the NCA, the bust was a breakthrough, as the Stava assault rifle, a converted 9mm pistol, and 100 rounds of ammunition had been stopped before they hit UK streets. Investigators said the weapons could have caused untold damage if they'd made it into the hands of organised crime groups. But the story doesn't end with 2 people in custody, because behind Addison and Damer was someone else, a figure known only as Coach TTT on the Wicker app, the man who supplied the guns in Amsterdam. DNA from the Zastava rifle matched someone still at large. A European arrest warrant has been issued, but to this day, that higher level contact hasn't been caught. So what does this case really show us? First, the lure of easy money. Addison and Damer weren't masterminds. They weren't smuggling dozens of crates in shipping containers. They were couriers, middle players, ferrying weapons in a car boot for cash. But their willingness to look the other way, to not ask questions, to play dumb, was exactly what organised crime gangs needed. Second, it shows how technology makes smuggling easier. Encrypted apps like Wicker let them plan and communicate under the radar. But it also shows how digital evidence can unravel everything. Phone records, texts, and DNA built the case that their words couldn't escape. And third, it's about appearances. Addison presented herself as a dancer, Damer as a personal trainer. Both showed off luxury holidays, designer items, and city breaks. But those images hid the truth, a gun pipeline from Amsterdam into Kent. And the risk they ran for it was enormous. Think about the timing too. March 2020, a pandemic shutting Europe down, most people staying home. Yet in the middle of the night, Addison and Damer thought it was the perfect time to run guns through the Channel Tunnel. It might have worked before, but this time their luck ran out. 9 years, 10 years, even 11 years might sound like just numbers. But for Addison and Damer, those sentences are most of their 30s gone. They went from planning the Maldives and Cayman Islands to serving time in British prisons. The bigger picture is chilling. The Zastava rifle wasn't destined to sit in someone's garage. The Zoraki pistol wasn't meant as a collector's piece. These were weapons for hire, for gangs, for violent disputes in UK cities. Stopping them at Coquel wasn't just a bust. It was preventing shootings, intimidation, and control on the streets. For Addison and Damer, it was the end of the line. For the NCA, it was a step in an ongoing fight. Because Coach TTT, the supplier, the link in Amsterdam, is still out there. And the fear is that for every courier caught, another waits, willing to risk everything for a payout and a taste of the cash-rich lifestyle. The story of this couple isn't glamorous. It's not romantic. It's not even clever. It's a reminder of how ordinary people, drawn by greed, can become couriers of extraordinary danger, and how fast the dream of luxury can turn into the reality of a prison sentence.